Yeah, and I mean that's been something my whole professional life, So I'm in my 28th year of being a chiropractor. And which is crazy. I mean, I'm like do I even feel like I'm 28 years old? Like how is that even possible? Uh,
I feel like I'm about 28, 29 right now,
right?
to be honest.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing to feel young when you're aging.
Mhm.
Um, so why chiropractic? Essentially, the early parts of my story, of why chiropractic, I think were just like I had a lot of association. I had proximity. My dad knew chiropractors. My dad created an instrument that was utilized by some famous chiropractors. And so it was just like it was in my environment. And that was part one. Part two was it just resonated with me. Like I am a experiencer
Mm.
um through my body. Like I've always been, I love physical comedy. Like I love when someone gets
Mm.
physically comedy, when they're using their body to describe and explain something. um I'm
Mm.
just a fan. I've always been a fan of the body. I experience through my body very much, always have. So much so when I was a little kid, I had to like really numb myself out because I was experiencing too many things that I didn't know what to deal with.
Mm.
So the chiropractic just made sense. Now, down the road, when I had to re-ask that question as an adult, like, why do I want to become a chiropractor? Then there was just the pragmatic, like, okay, I think I can pay the bills. I think I could make a
Mm.
living doing this. But then when I got into chiropractic college, then it was like this remembering. It was like this recalling of like, oh, this is why. When you like make a decision, you're like it all makes sense, but then you do it and you're like you're deep into the decision, you're experiencing the act of having made the decision and living it, and you're like, oh my god, I had no idea. Thank god I made that decision. There are all
Mm.
the layers and levels that you just couldn't know at that time until you experience it. So that's really what happened, and ultimately is it was kind of a reclaiming of the origins of chiropractic, which are very simple. It's basically the purpose of chiropractic was to unite man. So, in these days we say mankind or humankind, let's say,
Mm.
um, the physical with the spiritual. And
Mm.
we do that through the nerve system. Well, fast forward 100 plus years, and, science and consciousness and spirituality are all coming to very similar conclusions that they did in 1895, which is the spine and the nerve system's the conduit of consciousness.
Mm.
Um, Science even further is basically saying like the brain is basically like a receiver and a transmitter, but it is not like where consciousness comes from. And we know this because of so many studies in near death experiences. People who die, their heart doesn't work, their brain doesn't work, and yet they recall with great detail what things look like, what people are saying, smells that are had. So it's just like, well, okay, well, if the brain's dead and the heart's dead, that cannot be the
Mm.
origins, it can't be the alpha and omega of consciousness. It's just not.
Sure.
So that was my excitement for, is just like, for me, it was like the health and well-being of the human. But to me, even deeper and further into that was like the aspect of growth in consciousness. It was the ability for one to grow physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and feel more connected to themselves and others. That really was
Mm.
the like, that's what excited me about chiropractic. It's a simple premise. It's like, if the spine is being interfered with, then it affects how you receive and give information. So therefore, you're not experiencing, when your spine's distorted, your perception of reality is distorted. And
Mm.
so that alignment then creates clarity and therefore a clear living experience. So that's been my, kind of path. And you mentioned we've gone beyond an extra, and in the
Mhm.
next year or so, I mean, we're going to be teaching what we're doing. Actually, 2023 is our first foray into that,
Mm.
and we're going to be teaching outside of the realm of chiropractic. So I'm stepping outside of chiropractic. Eventually, I'm sure at some
Mm.
point I will, you know, let my license go and be a regular Joe, be a civilian teaching what we do.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Um, Experiencing through the body, right?
Hmm.
This alignment that causes, in some ways, it's the nervous system, I mean, a lot of people though are just thinking chiropractic, like, okay, my spine's aligned, like, what's the big deal? Like,
Right.
thanks, but like,
Right.
you know, so when you say the nervous system, you
Hmm.
know, in some ways, is it almost like not when my nervous system, when my spine's aligned, my nervous system is at ease, or my nervous system is more correctly attuned. And this also might kind of circle back to one of the first points you made, which is, hey, this is a trauma-based learning center. Welcome
Right.
to Planet Earth,
Yeah.
and maybe loop in some of those concepts as well. What would you say?
Yeah, totally. And so, the advanced above and beyond just the spine and the nerve system is
Mm,
ultimately there is a confluence between the spine, the nerve system, and the energy body. So, when I speak of the energy body, there's, again, there is more and more science research that's coming out that's saying, the ancients had it right all along that we are not just physical beings having a
mm,
spiritual, we're not just physical beings having a physical experience, we're physical beings having a spiritual experience, and I would
mm,
reverse that as well and say we're spiritual beings having a physical. So it goes both ways. So with that, there is this energy that's in our body, um, you know, spoken about as prana, as chi, as life
mm,
force, depending upon the cultural lens you're, looking through. And that energy emanates above and beyond the body. So, like a quick kind of easy way to know this is like, and it's so crazy to think that ATMs are kind of obsolete, but ultimately they are. But probably most people remember the days where you'd have to stand in line for an ATM, and
sure.
we could say that there is like an unwritten cultural awareness of like you don't stand 2 inches behind the guy who's next in line because like he's just
Yeah.
right. But how do we know that someone's like 2 inches behind us?
Mm-hmm.
But we know we're sensitized. Like we're just like what the, and we turn around and we're just like, dude, like what, can I help you? There's just like a, and because there is an energy that's around our bodies and we're sensitized to
Mm-hmm.
it. Interestingly enough, it's most powerful not at the brain but at the heart. And so the Heart Math Institute, they're out of Northern California, where a lot of greats come from. And that was just self-referential, gratuitous birth plug. They have been studying the energy around the body and locate it at the heart. And interestingly enough, it's about 6 to 7 to 8 feet, about the distance that
Mm.
we are all asked to stay away from each other for the little epidemic situation
I'm
that
sure
we
that had
had.
no negative
There was no,
consequences
there was no
whatsoever.
reason for that. No, because
Yeah.
viruses have been at the Virus Olympics. The most, the gold for virus jumping is only 5 feet. So they
Right.
know that if you're 6 feet away, there's no virus, that's even, not
Mm.
even, the, there's
The
just no
best of the
virus.
best
Yeah, the
of
best
all
of the
time. Yeah.
best. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. And of course, as was broken the 5 minute mile, I'm sure viruses will break the 5 foot
Yeah.
jump. But we have
Especially,
time.
especially
We
yeah,
have time.
especially when we have gain of function research that we
Yes.
we're artificially creating these things. But
Hmm.
I love
Hmm.
the tangents we're able to go on.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
yeah. I'm a
you
tangential
listeners are
speaker.
following.
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
tracking?